For 15 years, he stood at the pulpit and preached about grace. For 15 years, he told others that God loves the broken. And for 15 years, he hid the chains wrapped around his own soul. What happened when his secret finally came out will change how you understand your own hidden struggles. Stay with me until the end. In a small town where everyone knew everyone, there stood a white church with a tall steeple. And inside that church, every Sunday, stood Pastor David. He was the man people called at 2 a.m. when their marriages were falling apart. He was the voice that comforted the grieving. He was the steady hand that guided the lost back home. To his congregation, Pastor David was unshakable. But what they didn't know, what no one knew, was that every Saturday night, before he wrote his sermons about freedom and redemption, Pastor David sat alone in his study. And he drank, not a glass, not two, bottle after bottle, until his hands stopped shaking long enough to write words he desperately wanted to believe. It had started small, as these things always do. A drink to calm his nerves before a difficult funeral. A drink to quiet the voice that told him he wasn't enough. A drink to fill the emptiness that no amount of prayer seemed to touch. But small things grow in the dark. By year 5, he couldn't sleep without it. By year 10, he couldn't function without it. By year 15, he couldn't recognize the man in the mirror, a man who preached about honesty while living a lie. The worst part? He was good at hiding. He chewed mints constantly. He blamed his tired eyes on late-night prayer sessions. He kept his bottles locked in his car, never at home where his wife might find them. Every Sunday, he would stand before hundreds of people and speak about the freedom found in truth. And every Sunday, the hypocrisy burned like acid in his chest. "Who are you to talk about grace?" the voice would whisper. "You're the biggest fraud in this room." Some nights, he would kneel in his empty church and beg God to take the craving away. Other nights, he would beg God to just let him die, because surely death was better than being exposed. He had counseled people through addiction. He had held their hands and told them that God's love was bigger than their shame. But he could never say those words to himself. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Pastor David had been drinking since noon, more than usual, faster than usual. He didn't even remember getting into his car. The next thing he knew, red and blue lights were flashing in his mirror. When the officer approached his window, Pastor David saw recognition in the man's eyes. "Pastor David, is that? Are you all right?" He wasn't all right. His speech was slurred. His eyes were glassy. And when they asked him to step out of the vehicle, he could barely stand. The officer, a member of his own congregation, looked at him with something worse than anger, disappointment. By morning, everyone knew. The pastor who preached about truth had been living a lie. The man who counseled the broken was shattered himself. The voice that promised hope was drowning in secret despair. Pastor David sat in his living room, resignation letter in hand, waiting for the church elders to arrive. "This is it," he thought. "Everything I built, everyone I helped. It's all about to be erased." He had never felt more alone. But when the elders arrived, something unexpected happened. The first to speak was Margaret, a 72-year-old woman who had been in the church longer than anyone. Pastor David braced himself for judgment. Instead, Margaret sat down across from him, took his trembling hands in her weathered ones, and said, 15 years ago, I almost ended my life." David blinked. "I never told anyone," she continued. "I was too ashamed. A good Christian woman isn't supposed to feel that way. So I smiled. I served. I hid." She squeezed his hands tighter. "And every time you preached about grace being for the broken, I wanted to stand up and scream, 'I'm broken. Does it count for me too?'" Tears rolled down her wrinkled cheeks, but I never could. "Because you seemed so whole. How could you understand?" She leaned forward. "Now I know. You understand better than anyone." Before David could respond, another voice spoke. I've been addicted to painkillers for 3 years. It was Thomas, the head deacon, father of 4, the man everyone thought had everything together. My back surgery, the pills never stopped. I've been hiding it from everyone, my wife, my kids, this church. Then another voice. I've been having an affair. James, married 30 years, Sunday school teacher. It ended 6 months ago, but the guilt? I can't sleep. I can't pray. I feel like God will never look at me the same way. One by one, they spoke. Addiction, infidelity, depression, suicidal thoughts, eating disorders, secret gambling debts. The room that Pastor David thought would be his courtroom became something else entirely. A confessional. Margaret spoke again, her voice gentle but steady. David, for 15 years you told us that God's grace was for broken people. We believed you. But we also thought you were above us, that you had something we didn't. She shook her head slowly. Now we see the truth. You were never above us. You were with us, struggling like us, hiding like us, desperate like us. She smiled through her tears. Don't you see? Your weakness isn't what disqualifies you from leading us. It's what finally qualifies you. Because now we can actually believe that grace is for people like us. Pastor David did not preach the following Sunday. He stood before his congregation, not behind the pulpit, but in front of it, and he simply told the truth. All of it. The drinking, the hiding, the shame, the arrest, the years of feeling like a fraud. And when he finished, he expected silence. Instead, he heard weeping. Not weeping of disappointment, weeping of relief. After the service, a line formed, not to condemn him, to thank him. I've hidden my depression for 12 years. I thought I was the only one. I've been struggling with addiction and thought God could never use someone like me. I thought I was too broken for grace. Now I know I'm exactly who grace is for. That day, 43 people shared secrets they had never told anyone. 43 chains began to break, not because Pastor David was strong, but because he was finally weak enough to be real. Today, that small church has something it never had before. A recovery group that meets every week, not led by experts, but by people who understand. Pastor David still leads the congregation, but he leads differently now. He no longer pretends to have all the answers. He no longer hides his scars. And the people who sit in those pews, they no longer feel alone in their secret struggles, because their pastor taught them the most important lesson of all. Grace isn't for people who have it all together. It's for people brave enough to admit they don't. Perhaps you're listening to this today carrying your own secret, something you've hidden for months, maybe years. You've smiled through it, served through it, pretended through it, and all the while, a voice has whispered, if they knew the truth, they would never accept you. But here is what Pastor David's story teaches us. Your secret is not what separates you from others. It's what connects you to them. The thing you're hiding, someone else is hiding it too. And they are waiting, desperately waiting, for someone to go first. What if your weakness isn't your disqualification? What if it's your greatest gift to the world? You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You don't have to be whole to be used. You simply have to be honest. And perhaps that's exactly what God has been preparing you for all along. If this story touched something in you, I want to hear from you. What is one thing you've been afraid to admit, to yourself, to others, or to God? You don't have to share details. But if you're ready to take the first step out of hiding, leave a comment below. Even one word, me too. You might be surprised how many people feel the same way. And if you know someone who is carrying a hidden burden, share this story with them. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give is permission to be imperfect. Until next time, remember, your cracks are not where you're broken. They're where the light gets in.